Welcome.
Pause.
Happy brunch. Cheers.
Happy brunch. All right. Shall we?
Yeah.
Good morning, Melissa.
Good
Good
morning.
morning and happy Martin Luther King Day.
Yes.
Yes.
I know. I love that we're doing this with you today.
Oh.
I think it speaks volumes, and it kind of just ties along with what you do and what we do and what you believe and what we believe, and it makes it a little bit more powerful. I think.
That's true.
Absolutely. So grateful to be surrounded by this community that is doing the work that needs to be done in social justice in all the areas.
Yes. So we didn't really we talked briefly about like topics that we could use for today, and I think we kind of settled on the idea of like empowering children and kind of stepping aside and letting them become leaders of their own lives, right?
Yeah.
And like the magic.
I love how you say it.
Okay, cool. Cool. Well, and I know we know you. Well, I connected with you through Jen at Ferguson's because when I proposed to her what we were doing with Bloom, she said, "Oh my gosh, you have to meet Melissa because she's same everything that you guys are doing." And so we were able to meet with you when you were downtown with Future Makers at the Old Writers Block, right?
Yeah.
And so that was
that meeting. It was so great meeting you guys.
It was so nice, and it was an immediate connection too.
Yes.
Super easy.
So
thank you for inviting me and always continuing that conversation with me. It's been so great to, kind of be on this journey together.
absolutely. Well, and like I said, you're such an inspiration to us because you are doing so much for the kids in the community, and you were, for us, like the first person in Vegas to kind of support children in a really mindful way, and in lieu of the theme, encourage them to become leaders of their own lives and become entrepreneurs. And you've been empowering them, and that's exactly what we would like to do at Bloom. And so it's neat to see you doing that and it working and you getting such a positive response.
I really appreciate that. Just goosebumps. It's, as an educator or just a human trying to do something new in the world, it really is encouraging to get feedback, especially from amazing humans like you guys that are so brave and young and on the forefront of this. So that really, you guys have great new ideas. So for you to catch what I'm doing is very flattering and encouraging, right? How do we know we're on the right track when we're doing something so new?
Right.
So I guess I'll share a little bit about my background and where I came to Future Makers. So I think that we both also taught in schools in similar areas with CCSD. So I was at J.D. Smith Middle School for many years on Lake Mead and Bruce, and I was in special education. I was lucky to teach in many different what do they call that? Just designs. So co-teaching all the way to what they call self-contained. And I've been even thinking that word is just awful.
Yeah, it doesn't have a nice ring to it.
Yeah. So I kind of got to be a specialist though, and work with other educators in how do we reach kids, all kids, where they are at. So that's kind of where that started. And it was neat to kind of be, while I was on the forefront, I was in a team of other educators, and I could kind of observe and see and offer suggestions from the outside. So I started just in my mind thinking, what could we do differently? And when I would bring those suggestions, oftentimes it was not just a won't do, but a can't do in the system we were in. And then I just started encountering kids that just absolutely needed something different. And in special education, we do a lot of behavior therapy and things like this. And in my mind, it really just started feeling like conditioning, and my heart was going to deconditioning, right? I had a particular student at J.D. Smith who had issues with vision, and school was just not a place that he felt comfortable, connected, encouraged. and he was a young entrepreneur. He had a business fixing cars, and he was very good at it. Started making a lot of money and didn't want to come to school. And the vice principal and I would be putting together a plan, like working hard, like how can we get this kid to come to school? I don't know about you guys, if you've ever literally chased a kid down, that's when you really start being like, is this working, guys?
Right.
Is this
Right.
working? Like we would be chasing him, like, please stay, please stay. And I still regret that, and and buying into the system, and trying to get him to buy into school. What I wished I would have done was helped him with his business. And it made me start seeing, especially in that community. And so this is middle school. I think he was 13, that he really was capable of starting to make his own life at that time, but not in the way that CCSD or the community at that time was providing for him.
Right.
So it just really got my wheels turning. Unfortunately, I hate to be negative, but he ended up buying a gun with his money. Never hurt anyone, but I really just think it was like, I'm getting kicked out no matter what, right? And
He already had that mindset.
mhm, mhm. And so I just started seeing more and more of that. And I don't know if you know what happens when you're in a self-contained classroom and you leave CCSD, but that's when you go to like Miley or another school.
Oh, okay.
And so it was just like, literally, that's it. And the services being provided are like, right, behavior therapy, occupational therapy. And while that's great, it just wasn't working, and it doesn't work for certain kids. So that's when my brain started opening up, like, okay, I've really tried to work within this system. What can we do outside of it? I left my rolling cart in the principal's office one day and never looked back. And that was when I really started advocating. So that's when I became an advocate. And I don't know if you've ever sat in an IEP meeting with an advocate. They're not encouraged, which is, that made me start thinking too, right? Things that were being hidden from parents. You know, you can sign your kid out of testing. If a teacher shares that, they are basically disciplined for it. So all of this stuff was just like, again, I tried to work within the system. I thought that was my route. I thought that was the way to go. And it just turned out not to be. But yeah, inspired by the kids trying to make their own way when the system was working against them.
And I think it takes that moment of like, it's not like you were immediately turned off by the system. You're like, okay, how can I work with this to help these children, right? You always like, you try to find this like middle ground, this compromise, and you give it a go after a while. And then you're like, this still isn't working.
Compromise is a great word. You start feeling compromised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, definitely you see it in the children, but your
Oh,
when your own like beliefs are compromised.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so being an advocate, you were an advocate for the family.
Right.
Right. Okay. So you would speak on their behalf.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I started trying to do that as a teacher. A lot of people that teach, so I want to speak on that too. A lot of people that do teach in Las Vegas, or maybe come through Teach for America, or come to these inner city schools, are doing it purposefully and trying their hardest, kind of like I did. So I went from there to a suburban school, and when I started advocating there, that's when it was really looked down upon. And that's when it just really kind of was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was when you left.
That was when I left. Yeah.
And I've not heard those stories with you before.
I try not to be negative, but I know that you guys understand, and I know that the audience I'm speaking to, that you guys have this community you've created. I think they understand. I usually just try to be positive, and this saying, Future Makers is here to try to to fill in gaps and holes, but this is what they are and where they come from for me.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary to sometimes point out or be in a quote unquote negative situation because it brings you to that light as you did, you know? And so I don't ever see situations as negative. I just think it's like a process of taking you where you belong or what you need to do. So it's good to talk about these things, you know?
It's bringing awareness too to a lot of people who don't know the ins of what's actually going on in schools, or, you know, and I know, especially hearing it from people like you, you know, who said it the other day? She looked at us, she's like, well, you guys are the professionals. And we're like, huh? Us?
Yeah.
But because we have experience in education and we've experienced, you know, the system as a student, as an educator, and then we've experienced alternative learning as a student and as an educator, and you've experienced the system as an educator. And did you go to public school as well?
I'm yes in Pahrump. So
Okay,
that's
so you've experienced it as a student and a teacher. And so I think like when people hear educators speak to the issues in the system, it gives them a little bit more reassurance that although what we're doing is unconventional, it doesn't mean that it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's not based on you know, deep thought and
Right.
experience and even research.
Right. Right. And I mean, for us to completely resign and for you to have had so many intense experiences that you're like, screw the system, this is what we're doing and this is why it matters. Like, obviously, we've all experienced and seen things that over and over and over again have proved that they're not right and they're not working, and it's doing an injustice to our children.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think parents realizing that is really important.
Yes, yeah, I think that's true. And I love how you said maybe not negative, but more honesty. And it's really taken me a long time to just break that pattern that was instilled in me, even as an educator. Like I'm saying, like we were basically we shared what we shared, right? And so now we want to share it all, and I'm still really trying to learn how to do that.
Right.
Yeah, and when we share our truths, we tend to see more of those truths come out, but people were afraid to do it or say it. And that's kind of goes back to your story on how you were that person that would speak up for the other people. They were scared to say something about the air conditioning or whatever, but you were that brave person that was like, hey, this is what we need. Let's get it going. And it's same thing with the system. These kids don't need this, so let's get it going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So you resigned and then enter Future Makers?
So it was about 6 months in between that. Again, I just started kind of making connections. That's something that I found in my life that helps me make my own future, is kind of looking backwards and putting the pieces together. And that's when I started thinking about what could it look like, right? What could it look like? And then because I was located downtown for so long, and I was part of the downtown community because Sophie went to Ninth Bridge. So that's another place that I got to see new things happening, right? And exciting things. I always say, like, teachers are friends with teachers, right? So once I wasn't at CCSD anymore, I started branching out and looking, you know, to build new community as well. And I saw the gates go up at Ferguson's, and I was like, okay, this is a place where kids that are in this area could come and maybe feel safe and encouraged and be surrounded by art and other humans that maybe want to break the cycle and help as well. And my mind really just went to, we can do this like as a community, as a group of entrepreneurs, right? Because I was so like, I'm not going to get back in the system, right? Like that was when I was really just wanted to be in the free economy. Like, what can we do just as humans, right? And so then my mind started going to kind of like a business, like what could a business look like? for this. And I'm very inspired by the Exploratorium in San Francisco and a lot of things that people in like other places are doing with
Yeah.
maker spaces. So there's a place there called the Tinkering Studio that I just really fell in love with. Started researching tinkering, and I started thinking, okay, if kids can make things, if they learn that they can make things, then they maybe can connect that idea to they can make their own future as well. And while I was thinking about them creating businesses and selling it, it took me a while to make that direct connection back to the story I started with. So the kids themselves were like, okay, we're making all this stuff. We can sell it, right? We can make a business. And then we started at Market in the Alley, and Kume was already there. Tofu Teas was there. And some two other girls, Aspen and Fallon from Fallab, and their businesses are just like on point, right? I learned from them literally about branding and just so much from them about how to create products. So we all just kind of really did it together. And that was the coolest part about it, is the kids empowered me at the exact same time that I empowered them. And I think that is how it works. That's where the magic spot is, because you're in it together, right? So basically we all built our businesses at the same time.
Right. Well, it's co-creation, which is exactly what this world is built off of, isn't it? Is being able to learn and grow from and with each other.
Yeah, it really, the kids really just inspire me. So like, I mean, it makes me tear up thinking about how lucky I am to just have also found this amazing group of humans and children and families that let their kids be creative.
Yeah.
You know, I still get families that walk by and their kids are like, can we please go in? Can we please make things? Like, we don't have time, and you know, but then there are those other families that are just so encouraging. But that's another thing that I started noticing, like, right, even if a kid comes from a family that can buy them everything, it doesn't mean that they still get to make art. You know, so that's when I was like, well, we're just going to keep showing people that this is what kids want to do. And then the kids are going to be like, this is what I want to do. And it's kind of just happened that way. And so that's how they're empowering themselves. They're like seeing it. Oh, this is what I can do, what I can ask for. And that's kind of what I try to do with it being a maker space, right? So it's like putting out the materials and giving them the inspiration to make things, but also to make their life and their future.
Well, it goes hand in hand. It really does. Like once you have that sense of ownership and accomplishment of something, it's addictive. You're like, how can I feel this again? And it's really cool because I think that you are giving children a safe space to, and we've talked about this with Rebecca, you know, if children are given a task that they don't feel confident in, and there's a time limit, or there's, you know, a certain goal that they must meet, or an expectation that's held that they didn't choose for themselves, then it's very discouraging. And so I think it's really cool that you provide a space for children to come and create and let it fall and then create again. And you're instilling this idea that this is what life is, right? It's you taking ownership. It's you trying something that you think may work, and maybe it does, and that's great, and maybe it doesn't, and that's all right too, because we're here to support you if you need us. And that's a tricky, not tricky, but it's not a common.
Oh, it's tricky. And
Is it?
is that the kids are so used to having a given set of expectations, right? I have kids come in and they want steps, like first, next, like, okay, you know. And I started without even putting out like a sample, you know, like I prefer like a prompt or an invitation, but some kids just wouldn't make without that. And so that was that was tricky, right? So I always start with one, like I'll always have a give and make, I say, and then I say, let's get to know each other. And like, you can tell me what kind of materials you might be interested in or whatever. And that's kind of my buy-in to get them to move beyond that. Like, I need to know how to do this mentality. But you know, it's like, you do know how, you know your way.
Right.
Yeah.
You're creating a safe space for them to be themselves completely. And it just kept making me think of like going back to your story of that kid. I think that if that child felt like he was doing something good other than getting frowned upon on like not going to school and like, hey, like you found your passion, like do that instead. I know it has a lot to do with environment, but if he would have felt that positivity, I guarantee that positivity would have overtaken the other aspect, and maybe he wouldn't have bought the gun or something like that. You know, it's all about how you shift someone's mind.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know the exact saying, but what's that saying? And change the word looking for attention to connection.
Connection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you guys read the same book?
Yeah, that mindset alone, that shift is so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it completely changes the way you look at children.
Right. And I
when
mean,
they're
what a
acting
great
differently.
connection. He was so talented and yeah.
I also think it's funny to go back, we're like zigzagging. When talking about how children were like, well, where are the steps? Just tell me what to do. Because I know that, you know, kindergartners, you know, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, if you give them something like, okay, this is what we're making, and this is exactly how you must do it. They're like, what? Right? They don't want to know. They just want to try it and play around. And so I think it really speaks volumes that, you know, the older they get, the longer they're conditioned to think that, you know, we almost don't trust them to be able to do it without us telling them how.
That's so funny you say that, because we used to teach, I call them baby classes, but toddlers, really like 1 to 4.
Uh-huh.
And I love those classes. We would do a lot of process art. And I think you just hit on why. You know, it was really just the process of art and letting them figure that out.
I'm gonna add on to what you just said. It's kind of also tying up to the Martin Luther King Day thing. That's kind of where like race comes into play also. It's like people from everywhere around the world come to the US, so it's such a melting pot, yet we still have this one structure that we must follow. So our feelings, our worth, everything gets so suppressed because of that one size fits all thing. Excuse me. So yeah, this is when I kind of lost my thought, but yeah, just exactly what you were saying. That's when race comes in, because you're molding them to do everything the way that they want you to. Yet you come from somewhere else where this is not what I do, or this is not in my cultural background. This is not what I celebrate, yet you want me to do this. And then you have no imagination anymore, or you like cancel out all of the other things that you felt so happy about and to share with the world. But you come to America and there's this, and then that. And like, I get it that to live here, there is a certain way to operate because of like our freedoms and stuff like that. But also like, there's no mindfulness of like other people's culture and how they've learned. So that's just,
yeah, you take away their anything that made them who they were.
Yes, exactly.
And then try and replace it with something that, like you said, is so unnatural and that they're not surrounded by at home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, it's homogenized, and I have literally seen it. I have seen kids who did not fit in a box, who maybe spoke louder or communicated in a different way, punished.
Yep.
I have seen kids, Black kids be suspended way more often. I have absolutely seen all of these things happen, and I did not know the answers. I just knew it was wrong, and I knew that it was just coming from what we're seeing now. You know, a culture of white supremacy, of our way being the better way, and just knowing that's not true. That is not the truth.
And it's so deeply embedded in our culture, just so deeply rooted that we don't even realize it.
Yep.
And I taught in a school that had like very few white children, and yet we were still using the same way of doing things.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and
It's not-
I felt so lucky because the area I was in is very people are still in their culture, right? People are still experiencing that in the home.
Yeah.
And so to come and have that just be such a
Yeah.
it felt so
Yeah.
The
traumatic.
the children are getting like double punished, almost like punished at school because they're not doing what they have to do, and then punished at home because of your grades. So now you're getting both stress from your parents and from the school. So then it gets even worse and worse.
And what you guys were saying before about being an expert, that became such a huge like responsibility because people would just listen. And I'd be like, no, please don't just do what I say.
Right.
Talk, tell me what's going on. Like, I really need to hear it. Yeah, that was really disheartening. And I was just the system again. By then they were in middle school, right? So how many times had the meeting gone just like, we don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't know if that's what it was, but that's what it felt like.
Mhm.
And again, that's where cultures don't get to meet because one culture is just taking over, you know?
It's another thing with like demographics, like how you were saying you were in a place where they still had their culture very much so alive, but that's like another thing that's so wrong, like how they separate things, geographically, because like these you're in the section where they keep it alive because that's all they can afford and all they can do, and there's these only influences, and that's where their mind also stays in their bubble. They have no other experiences that are tangible or even maybe reachable to them to go out and explore. And again, that's why
I think that too. I used to really think that too. And I still think that a little bit. And that's, like I said, why we're located where we're at, so kids can meet us there.
yes.
But I want all kids to feel like whatever's happening in your bubble is just as important, and I want to know about it and have it be in everybody's bubble. Let's share those bubbles.
Absolutely.
Well, it's validating where they come from, right?
Yeah.
Right. And for kids especially, like all they want to do is feel a part of something, right? They just want to feel that, like we said, connection.
Yeah.
And when they're at home and they're surrounded by one type of environment, and then they come to school where it's like you said, it's like this wall is up, and they must transform to be who the system is trying to turn them into being. That didn't come out right, but
No, that's probably correct.
that doesn't fit. And then they try and implement that at home, and that doesn't work. So then they go back to what they know. And so it's this constant back and forth, and they've missed these really beautiful moments to become who they are. And so I think it's neat what you're doing at Future Makers, because they are fully themselves. They are doing exactly what they want, what is meaningful to them. And I know I've talked to you about this so many times, and I could kick myself for not remembering her name every time. I need to write it down. At the market, and I bought slime from her.
Layla.
And I remember it brought me to tears what she was doing, because she was selling slime, and part of the proceeds were going to this. Do you remember the name of the organization?
Yeah, Layla is actually my best friend's daughter. So I do know her whole story. It's Hydrocephalus Association. The Hydrocephalus Association.
I wouldn't have remembered that.
I don't know I don't think she would mind if I shared, but she has hydrocephalus. So she was one of the first students that I started advocating for. About 6 years old, she started having trouble in school, and no one knew why, but she never quite had enough trouble to qualify for an IEP or special services. She failed a bunch of grades, and literally we had meetings with the principal where the principal was just like, it's okay, grades don't matter. Yet she was feeling all of this like failure. Anyway, it was a full cycle. And then we finally found out she had hydrocephalus.
Would you mind sharing what that is exactly?
It's water on the brain.
Oh,
So she had too much fluid in her, like she knows all the words. I wish she could share.
she told the whole story.
Yes,
You did-
yes. But the slime too comes from that. So she started ASMR. So she started learning and watching other kids that had hydrocephalus playing with slime, and it was helping them feel calm and just process. And that came out of it. And then she's donating. She makes pretty good money too. So she
Yeah.
donated.
But she's like the most beautiful example of like, it's her own. Like, this is
Oh,
something
yeah.
that I experienced, and like you honored her experience. And people think of slime and their, parents probably like, oh my God, please no. But for her, like, there was a meaning behind it.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of natural people in our community, which is great, right? And chemicals can do weird things. So we've always been trying to find a more natural recipe, but because the story is so beautiful, I was just like,
Yeah.
no, this overrides that.
Yeah.
And
And it's beautiful. And like, she's making a difference. And it's
yes,
because, she was surrounded by people who encouraged her to do what felt right for her. And now like it gives me chills.
Me
Like that's,
too. Now she's gonna be able to be that person to advocate for the people. Like, I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea. So now, so now she is gonna be that person to bring awareness to other
and
people.
she had a very special surgery. Like she got very like, have you ever seen a kid that has a shunt? Like a shunt, like a tube to taking the liquid or water from their brain. Anyway, she was very lucky that she was she had a surgery that they've only ever done in adults in Nevada. She was like the first child they ever did this surgery on. So she has no shunt. She's able to function. I mean, it's just like, it was a miracle. And so she's very into sharing that. Like she knows. And like, I want to help the kids who maybe didn't get as lucky as I did.
that's beautiful.
What encouraging does.
I literally feel like I had nothing to do with it. But Market and the Alley and the community, they were also just, that's what I mean. It felt just so natural. And I think it felt that way to the kids too. Just so inclusive.
Yeah, it's funny. We're talking about environment and feeling supported, and it's neat that you found that. And you've been encouraged and you've been empowered by the people, by the adults in that community and the families and the children to continue on what you're doing.
Yes.
So it's just like, that speaks to the power that environment can have. And now going back to what we talked about, she's experienced that fulfillment and that accomplishment of like, holy shit, I did that. Like, that was me. I created this project that's changing lives and bringing awareness to something that matters. And how old is she?
She's 13 now, and you can see it. I mean, she is so empowered, and now she's so empowered with issues of social justice and just awareness and just, it really, I mean, and because she struggles with school, this is important, right? This makes her know. She knows for a fact that she can be successful in life or whatever that means.
Right.
And school's not going to play a huge part in that for her. Or the kind of school that we have seen in the past.
I love her story, and there's so many more like that. And I know that you see them, and I'm so excited to experience that with Bloom and
oh, you will wait till you guys see what's going to start happening.
So first question for you, and these are going to be more for us, is, playing off how you said some of the kids will come and they'll need those sets of instructions, or they're a bit turned off when you give them the freedom to just exist in whatever that may look like for them. So I know that that's something I've struggled with as we've started working with children, is I kind of just expect them to know how to spend their time. And for those older children who have been so conditioned for so long, it's a bit difficult. And so I guess what my question is, what advice do you have for us as we begin to work with more children who have been in the system for a while and who have that natural ability to learn and create and ask questions has been a bit suppressed. Do you have advice for us on kind of scaffolding and easing them out of that?
Giving them, like I said, the materials, the freedom, and the inspiration behind that. So, but also you know, Sarah, just in that, when you were saying that, how you said you assume that kids know. The other day I was shocked. I gave a kid a stencil, and the stencil was like, I just asked them, like, did you want to use this? Or they didn't know how, like they couldn't figure out, like, oh, you tape it on, you put the, you know, so it really, and that's something that we have to remind ourselves just as educators. You can't assume anyone knows how to do something. Right. So that's just where showing a lot of different ways of doing and being, I think, helps. So it doesn't mean that necessarily, maybe, for example, for painting a stencil, you know, like having kids and you and everyone else be examples of making art or of learning, and that's kind of how kids see, right? Mm-hmm. Learn by seeing. Mm-hmm. And then also having a lot of inspiring things around and people around. So that's another reason we love being at Ferguson's, right? So there's just a lot of art, a lot of people making art, and that's what I do. So that just automatically opens the door to kids to be like, how was that made? You know, or what materials might I use for that? But without seeing a starting point, that can be difficult.
Okay.
Also, like I said, my trick is sometimes having some examples out and some step-by-steps for kids that really might need it, and then moving away from that.
Okay.
Like maybe the next time.
Gradual release.
Yeah, gradual release.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, encouraging their creativity and free thinking. I think I do that automatically. Like, I will do what they just did. Like, that's a great idea. I'm going to try it now. Literally all the time I learn.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time.
That also encourages them, like, ooh,
so
I
much.
Something, yay.
Yeah, like literally I can be like, I use it in the business, and that for them is like, okay, and then they see it, like, you know, when they come around or whatever. Yeah, that's, so seeing to believing is a big one, I think. Yeah.
And I think this is a really cool part about multi-age grouping too, is, you know, because Yamil and I are working with a small group of children right now, and ranging from ages 4 to 9. And it's really neat because obviously the older kids have been in conventional school for a couple of years, and then they're surrounded by these younger children who have not. And so they're able to kind of be inspired by those younger children because they're still super tuned into that creativity and their imagination. And that'll be really encouraging for the older children. Mm-hmm. I think it'll kind of spark that in them again.
Oh, for sure. I love that. And then for it's just a cycle, right? Because what might happen, you know, is like the little one has an idea, the older one like implements it. And then the little one sees, oh, this idea can grow, can get bigger.
Yes.
I always say that to the kids. There's no copying, right? They're always like, no, we're inspiring each other.
Yeah, that's what I would tell my kids. They're like, they copied me. I was like, but you inspired them. Like they believed in so much that they wanted to create that too. Like that's how beautiful is that? Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to mindset, just a shift of mindset and semantics. So what is your advice for, again, us, in general, when it comes to creating a space that is, and I guess this kind of goes with my last question, but on a broader scale, to building our own community of self-directed learners, do you have any advice on, you know, addressing different situations, or is there like a big lesson that you've learned since opening Future Makers that you're like, oh, I wish somebody would have told me that, or this has really transformed the way I do things?
So I think I learned a lot from the tinkering curriculum that I was working with, because that's exactly what it talks about, is making without a set result in mind.
Mhm.
And there's an article called "It Looks Like Fun, but Are They Learning?"
Oh gosh.
And I share that with a lot of people that maybe can't see the inner workings of what's happening. So I think you guys do a wonderful job of that. Myself, if I go to a doctor and they tell me something, I'm like, also give me a book about it, let me learn more.
Mhm.
I think you guys are doing a wonderful job of that with your families and with the kids. So I would just keep going. I learn a lot from you in that. So transparency in the journey. I mean, that you guys are great at that. And then just sharing your own inspirations. And, this is something that I even tell my parents, we are learning this together. We are starting something new, right? And it's a completely open door for feedback, for ideas, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job with that. But yeah,
Thank you.
open communication and like, nobody's really in charge, right? Like
Right.
maybe I have more experience, but it's definitely a team effort.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I even sometimes think of it like an IEP team almost, but stretching it out, right? Like on the IEP team, what did we have? The general ed teacher, the special ed teacher, the parent, any experts that were involved.
Mhm.
And now I think of it more like someone from the community, a mentor, a family member, maybe another kid that relates to them. So just like building that team.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That is
Sure.
very helpful. And then advice for parents, like for parents who are, especially right now, I think a lot of parents are recognizing that their child isn't thriving in school, and that may not necessarily be the child's fault, right? They're not the problem. It's kind of the system or, the curriculum or, one aspect of it. And so I think a lot of parents are tuning into that and are wanting to be advocates for their children, but maybe are a little nervous to stray away from what has been so ingrained in our society for so long. Do you have advice for parents who are kind of beginning or looking into beginning a journey of alternative education?
Follow your intuition,
Mm,
right? Just like in anything that's really important, you're going to have people, again, with that expert title telling you things that in your gut don't feel right. Listen to yourself. Because again, this is a new movement. And while research is great, I also, recommend reaching out. Like people like us want, like, we love talking about this stuff, right?
yes,
So
yes.
reach out. Like when you see somebody else who is also going through that wondering period or awakening period, connect with them. But definitely your intuition, because I know you and myself, we all just want to do what's best for kids, and the caregivers know best. So don't be afraid to share that out, and share what you need, what families need. This is something else. We have a family plan. I put together that family plans, really like I said, community plan, like who is your village, and reach out to them and share with that village what you need and what your child needs, and then just keep extending it out, I think.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask for what you think is right. Like I said, if you feel like testing is not for my kid, talk about it. They're not going to tell you that you can opt out, but if you start asking questions, right? Questions drive, I think, and open doors. So question on Google, other humans, just keep asking those questions that your intuition is driving you to ask.
That was beautiful.
And reach out to other humans that are asking the same questions.
Yes. Which they're more common, maybe not even more common, but more vocal now than ever, I think.
Oh,
Really-
absolutely. I mean, there's Facebook groups, Instagram. I mean, you can find a community. And then there's us too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who care about these issues want to help.
Yeah.
Or not even, it's not even helping so much. That was my old mentality, right? It's more like want to be involved, want to connect, want to collaborate.
I like that. Yeah.
I sometimes I feel like I hope what I'm saying is helpful because you know I really am a little bit beyond following like a certain pedagogy or referring back to a certain way of doing or being because right now it really is all cracked wide open. And I think that that last question was really important. And I hope that we all just keep going forward during this important time in history.
Yeah.
And digging into important issues and asking important questions. So, and involving our children in that, however you feel comfortable.
Right. Which is huge. And I know we've talked about that a lot, is providing an opportunity for your children to ask questions because whether they're able to vocalize it or not, they feel what's going on in the world, you know, and so allowing them the time and the space and the means to ask questions that are within the realm of their understanding, which are appropriate, right? Because there's adult issues that a child shouldn't feel stressed about, but it's finding, which is so tricky, you know, like finding that balance of what's the word I'm looking for?
Appropriate.
Yeah, like being informed without letting it consume them.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
Definitely, I think asking them questions too, and a simple question would be, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about this? Or how are you feeling right now? Checking in, you know, but they have the best things to say. And that's what I just want to, I'll just make that my last point, like education, social justice, whatever the issues are, they are the ones with the answers.
Yes.
And so that's very important is to start giving them that freedom of expression, children, because that is who knows. Like I look around and I think like I am questioning, but what's the future going to look like? They have the answers to that, right? So don't be afraid to ask. When I asked Sophie about what happened, how she was feeling about what happened at the Capitol, she said it was the most racist thing she had ever seen in her life. And that she said she even knew, this part really got me, that she said, Mom, I've even seen that there are some Black people that even support Trump, but I know they wouldn't go there because they know that they would be hurt. So, you know, it's just like letting them think through that and then letting it drive what you can do for the world too.
And that's really how you break this cycle of ignorance in all things is by opening up those conversations and allowing kids to speak on how they're feeling and to ask questions and to do the research together and to go to these things together. And I think, and I'm pretty ashamed, you know, when like the Black Lives Matter movement was going on and I was so out of touch. I just did not realize, like you think, you know, but I think people became really comfortable or I mean, it was almost like they reached that limit of like, I need to speak to what's going on. And it really opened up my mind. And I just felt like a really shitty human being because I had noticed that I had done things that were maybe insensitive or weren't intentional, but kind of went along with this embedded belief that our country has been built upon. And I wish that these conversations would have been more popular, for lack of a better word, or just more common as I was getting older, because I think that a lot of the times people do things without really understanding what they're doing. And that's evidence, like everything is coming to a head in our country right now. And so it's really cool to know that right now, this generation of children is getting an opportunity to surpass that and to do better than we did.
And they will too.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that they will in regards to these issues. Like, I think back to when we all started teaching about the environment, right? It just became part of the curriculum. And sometimes you look back and you see these curriculum shifts and you're like, it mattered. It mattered. So I think that hopefully that'll happen now. I was involved with an excellent program over the summer that had a social justice curriculum that hit hard. And, I hope that continues. It will make a difference. I see little conservationists and I think back to those lessons, right? I'm sure you saw them come through, so it's important.
And it's neat to see what children will take to. I can think of a handful of children who, when we would talk about Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi or Rosa Parks or Harriet Tubman, or, and who just like immediately gravitated towards what they did. And then kids who would really gravitate towards the environment and recycling or water pollution, or, so kids they'll find something if they are given an opportunity to be exposed to it.
Yeah, we're all wired with good.
Yeah.
To those things.
We are. Yeah. And it's just all about giving them an opportunity to be exposed to these new ideas or to the things going on in the world, because, oh my gosh, children are powerful.
The solutions that they have
and they
for
don't have
things
the inhibitions that we do.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's keep doing that, guys.
Yes.
Cheers to that.
Yes.
Cheers. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate what you guys are doing so much.
Likewise. Yeah. Seriously, just always such an honor to speak with you, because you are one of our biggest inspirations when it comes to being mindful and helping children develop wholly and intentionally and creatively. So thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you both. I sometimes wish I had a partner. I think this is so beautiful, the way that
it's fun.
Yeah, that's so fun. And I've been in a very it's been hard to stay positive and so this conversation went full circle.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and it's interesting to talk during this time. And you guys are very inspiring. Thank you for reminding me too to stay positive.
Thank you.
We're definitely your partners too.
Aww.
You've been such a great help throughout this journey for sure.
From the very
Same. Gosh, man, it's like, we're doing something new for sure. For sure, we got to keep going.
Last thing, if people want to learn more about Future Makers, or they want their children to be involved, how can they do that? Get more information.
So everything's under Future Makers LV. So they can reach out to me through our website or Instagram. We're on Facebook, not as active there, but probably Instagram. Send me a DM.
Perfect.
Future Makers LV.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Enjoy your day.
You too, guys. Thanks again for the champagne.
You're welcome. Enjoy.